Welcome to the Women Writing Podcast. I'm your book coach, Lisa Kovala. I'm an Author Accelerator, certified fiction and memoir book coach, and the author of Like Water for Weary Souls, Sisters Winter War, Surviving Struthoff, and the upcoming Hygge House Cozy Mystery Series. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. Take a coffee break with us as we chat about all things writerly with authors and publishing industry professionals. And don't forget to sign up for my Women Writing newsletter on Substack and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great content. In today's episode of Women Writing, I'm having a coffee break with Sarah Gentry. Sarah is a math PhD turned Author Accelerator triple certified book coach who helps writers shape their compelling ideas into commercially viable books. Also a musician, she loves integrating the creative with the analytical, and she brings both perspectives in her work with writers. Sarah is a married homeschooling mom, so she empathizes with the time-strapped women writers who wear lots of hats. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm great, Lisa. How are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for coming today. What are you taking a coffee break from?
Oh, great question. I am taking a break from the bitter cold. I live in the Midwest, in the United States, and it was just frigid at the end of January, to the point where schools are being canceled because kids can't be outside. And so today it's supposed to get up to like 45 degrees, and I don't know what to do with myself with that.
So, okay, I don't know what 45 degrees is.
Oh, sure.
Celsius.
Off the top of my head, I don't either. Let's say, probably I'm guessing about 8 degrees Celsius, maybe.
Okay. So
Maybe
a big
10, somewhere
shift.
in there. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So where you are normally, what kind of winters would you have? Would they be pretty
Well,
cold or?
we are in this strange location. I'm in Iowa, and it gets bitterly cold in the winter, negative temperatures. So that would be negative for Celsius as well. Very, very, very cold. And then in the summer, it will swing and get above 100, like regularly too. So I'm not exaggerating when I say our weather will cover 130-degree Fahrenheit
Amazing.
fan. And it just feels unfair. It feels like if we have to deal with bitter cold, we should not have to deal with sweltering
Right.
heat.
Exactly. I hear you. I feel like we're the same situation here in Northern Ontario. I don't think we get the really, really heat, but we do a couple days in the summer. We'll get some really
Yeah.
terrible heat, and then we get really, really cold days. But yeah, it's true. But at least we get the seasons, which I appreciate all four seasons. I think
Yes.
that's fantastic. It's folks who are getting like, I lived in New Zealand for a year and a half, and winter was rainy. It was so beautiful and green, but it was rainy, and I felt cold, even though I was Canadian, and they laughed at us for wearing our winter coats. Kids are in shorts, and we're like, it's so cold. I don't know, but I think weather really affects us, and it does
Yeah.
change how we see our day. And so I'm loving the sunlight right now. It's been so
Me
good. I feel
too.
like uplifted again. So great. So I wanted to chat with you because you're also an Author Accelerator book coach. And I want to talk about all kinds of things having to do with book coaching and writing and some of the ways you approach working with clients. And I think that'll be really fun because I think there's a lot of similarities between book coaches and how they approach things, but I also think everyone has their own way of doing things and sort of like
Absolutely.
looking at um, how they approach clients and the work they're doing in different ways. So I thought that would be kind of fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always fun to compare, like you said, with
Yeah.
and the good kind of comparison.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and also people like I think it's interesting because you learn from each other too. Like we
Yeah.
all have a lovely Author Accelerator community, like in North America, but also around the world. And like we have this Canadian contingent up here, and it's really lovely to see everyone just doing the work that they love so much and
Yes.
learning from each other. Like that's
Yes.
I think is so great. Like it's not competitive, it's really like supporting each other, and it's really nice.
I love that and I agree 100%.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's Jenny Nash's influence too, right? Like she just
Yeah.
creates that really welcoming environment for everybody. So can we talk about like you have a math PhD. So
Yeah.
you're the first person I thought, oh, you've decided to become a book coach. Before you were a book coach, what did life look like for you? What kind of pursuits did you have then?
Okay. This is really um, an interesting question because it kind of seems disjointed, but in my mind it's not. I do have my degree in math, and I had been teaching at the University of Michigan. After I got my degree, I was helping out with like the huge sections of calculus and
Mhm.
that whole introductory sequence that undergraduates tend to go through. And I really enjoyed that. I really did enjoy the teaching aspect of being in academia. That was why I pursued getting my PhD to begin with. So it was a lovely fit. But I am also married to an academic who was a couple years ahead of me. So it's often in academia that when you're done with your PhD, you will pursue maybe a postdoc fellowship, or in my case, I was teaching right away. But my husband had been doing a postdoc job for quite a bit. He works on antiviral drug research.
Okay.
So 2020 was an interesting year for
Yeah,
us.
that's right.
But he was doing that, and the time was kind of right for him to be moving on. You usually do that for anywhere from, I don't know, 3 to 6 years, depending on your study and situation. So he had been doing that for about 4 years, and his mentor suggested that maybe he try to find an academic position, which he did. And then we also had our first child when all this was going on. So we moved and started a new job and all of this within and had a baby.
As you
Um,
do, like if you're gonna do anything, just make all the changes at once.
That's exactly right. And so we did that all at once. And because of that, there we go. Um, I I was not going to start a new job. I don't think I even could have started a new job. Usually daycare facilities, it's like we want your child to be at least this many months old. And when the academic year started, like this would not have worked. And plus the stress just would have been, I think, insane. So my husband continued his academic path, and we decided that I would stay home with the baby. And so I did that, and then just kept doing that. And
Right?
so it's so interesting because I had never thought that I would be a stay-at-home parent. And then I was like, I think I'm going to be a stay-at-home parent. And then we moved, not literally, but we moved into like homeschooling, which was another thing that was not on my radar at all. So I became a homeschooling parent, um, had another child, and that's where I found myself. And after my second child was born, I don't know, probably when he was about two, a year and a half or two, I was really starting to get like a creative itch to do something. I'm also a musician. So I also have an undergraduate in music, and I'm a piano player and whatnot. So I hadn't really had an outlet for that like I did before we had moved. I just did not have those connections that I had had. And so that's how I fell into writing again, because I've always been really avid reader. And I thought, once upon a time, I liked to write. Maybe I'll just start doing some of that. And one thing led to another. And I came to Author Accelerator as a writer first, and took went through the book coaching instruction that we do with the thought that I thought I would teach myself better on how to write, and discovered that for my logical math brain, the editing and the book coaching was actually a really great fit for me, potentially more so than the actual creative writing that I might want to do myself. Things just really clicked with me to be able to analyze and evaluate writer's writing. So I fell in love with that, and now we're here.
I love it. I love it because it's so easy to compartmentalize people into one
Yes.
thing, like you're a musician or you're a mathematician or you're a professor or you're this. But the reality is most people are a lot of things and they've just chosen one to lean into more than others. And it maybe they identify more with one thing at a certain time in their life. And then later it's like, oh, but like the fact that you're a musician and you are a creative person, you were writing, all of those things like so, and then when you said you were teaching, I thought, well, of course, right? Like it all just makes sense where you've landed, that you are now like as I was a teacher working with folks. And although we say it's coaching, there's a lot of teaching involved too. Like a lot of those
Yes.
skills come into play, even though it's not quite the same thing. But like it's such an interesting genesis, you know. And I think a lot of folks in the Author Accelerator community have similar, like uniquely their own, but similar paths where like my life went this way, and then I was at this another stage. So it's just fascinating for me to hear
Yeah.
how people came around to it.
Well,
And yeah,
thank
because
you.
on paper, the leap from math to Author Accelerator, I thought that's interesting, but how? And that now makes complete sense that really it was always there in you, the teaching and the
Mhm.
creativity and the writing, and also that analytical side, which I think is super important when you're working on people's projects. Um, so I think a lot of listeners will understand now what a book coach is, but I still get the question. Like there's still a lot of folks that don't really quite understand
Yeah.
what this role is. Like for you, what does book coaching mean, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I look at book coaching as a way for writers to get the help and support they need in order to create the best book that they can.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have a similar philosophy in that we're trying to help the writer write their book, not write my book
Yeah,
or
our version.
someone else.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not the one writing your book. Like, you
Right.
still need to do the work to do that. But I think because, and of course, there's a time and a place for ghostwriters
Yeah.
and things like that. But for people who really want to learn how to write a book, I think working with a book coach is a really transformational experience, not just for your writing, but I think you grow as a person by going through the process of being coached on something that is as challenging as writing a book.
Yeah, I totally agree. I forget what the stat was, but the number of decisions a writer needs to make
Yeah.
in a novel, like it's like in the millions, I think. Like it's overwhelming. And just to have somebody in your corner who is um like invested in it, but also a little bit more detached, right? So they can see it,
Yes.
the like I know as a writer myself, sometimes I feel like um so deeply involved in it that I can't necessarily see the issue, or like that part's so beautiful. Yeah, but it doesn't need to be there. Like it's not
Right.
functioning, it's not working, or whatever it is. So there's, like when you're really close to something, it's hard to see it objectively, and the coach can help you kind of tug those threads and go, okay, like let's see what's really happening. So I love that
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely. And I try to practice what I preach a little bit too, of course, by working with people myself as like hiring coaches. And I mentioned I play the piano. I still take online lessons with my college piano teacher, and people are always surprised by this. So like, why would you do this? I have achieved a certain level where I don't need to take lessons anymore. But I can go to the teacher and be like, this isn't, I, I'm stumbling here. I can't figure out why I can't play this. And she'll be like, your wrist is falling there.
Hey,
And I can't diagnose that in myself, but having somebody who knows what they're doing,
yes.
um, see what I'm doing to be able to reflect that back to me and like that it's fixed.
That's a great example because we would never question an athlete who is at a very, very high level. Like the Olympics are,
Yes.
sort of, and those folks aren't like, oh, I made it to this level. I don't need my coach anymore. No
Right.
way. That's who they need the whole time, like in their corner. And and assessing everything that's happening and being that support person and emotional
Yeah.
support as well as like technique and you know like it's just funny that we think of like any career that is at a high level has required professional development. You know, you're
Hmm.
constantly learning and somebody else is like teaching you or providing new information or like new techniques. Like I'm thinking doctors and teachers and nurses, like
Yeah.
always professional development. But there's something about writing, maybe because we kind of are writers right from the time we're very little. And so we don't
Yep.
feel like we can do it and we don't think that necessarily like I can just write my book. Well, sure, you can just write your book, but will it be the best book it can be? Will it be how much you're going to learn through that process? And there's so many factors involved. And I've met a lot of writers who had written that first book on their own and then continued to write and get better and looked back and went, oh geez, what did I do there? That book should never have been published. It should have been in a drawer. But I mean, it's a learning process. And so,
Yes,
I appreciate that
absolutely.
people put themselves out there and give it a try. But there's definitely a role for people in to get that support in all professions, including
Yep.
in the arts. I mean, if you think of the master painters, they all had that master that was teaching them, and then they taught the next group, and you know,
Yep.
that kind of part of the creative process, I think, in lots of ways.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So there, you mentioned that there are sort of several things that are really important resources that we all have to kind of manage and that you mentioned there was time, energy, and money, and that really resonated with me. I thought, oh goodness, those are three really big topics. Let's talk about time first.
Okay.
How do you like because that's big, that's a lot of things, but like that how do you address that with clients or what are you seeing the needs are?
Right. So I get this question a lot because people do see that I'm juggling lots of things at any one time. But the thing is we all have the same amount of time. It's how we choose to allot it. Um, Honestly, when people talk about time, I think they're making wishes as opposed to realistic, creating these realistic expectations for what they can do with the time. One of my favorite things to do with people is to ask them to, well, I do a few things. Ask them to monitor, somehow clock how much time it takes them to write a certain number of words, for instance, so that you can have a general pace of like, I write 300 words an hour or whatever it's going to be. And of course you can't take like the best writing session that you ever had
True.
when the
Yes.
words are flowing. You have to remember that sometimes maybe it took you an hour to get 15 painful words
Yeah.
out or something. So you want to kind of look at an average, of course, when doing that. And then look at how many words your novel needs to be,
Yeah.
for whatever genre or book. If you're writing nonfiction, I shouldn't have assumed novel, nonfiction, memoir, whatever your book is going to be. Um, and you know that you've got this target word count. And now you're going to look at your average pace. How many hours is it going to take me to literally write the first draft of that book? And that's not even talking about whether you're going to plan the book or
Yeah.
brainstorm about the book. That's not, that is literally just, typing or handwriting the words on the page. And often this surprises people. Like we just set these goals. We hear of things like, I'm going to write a novel in a month, or I'm going to write a novel in a year, or I'm going to write a novel in 90 days. Like there are these kinds of frameworks all over the place. I happen to run one. But you can't just say that's what you're going to do if you haven't considered how much time that's going to take. Because now that I know how much time that's going to take, I have to look at my calendar and find where I'm going to put that time. And if I can't fit 100 hours, I'm just picking a random number here. If I can't pick 100 hours in the next 60 days to write my novel, newsflash, I either have to write faster, I either have to cut things from my life in order to make more time, or I need to set a better goal.
Yeah.
And so, For me, it's often just a disconnect that people have because they see what other writers are doing, maybe their writing friends are doing, and just because one person can doesn't mean that you can too, or that you should even, for
Right.
that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a good point because I mean, we're all at different stages in our life. So like my kids are older now, they're out of the house. I have a lot more time. Look, I have a lot of things that I'm juggling, but I also have a lot of dead time that I can use in the ways I choose. Whereas when I was working full time and the kids were little and they had activities and I had activities and everyone was juggling, in a way, sounds so strange, but in a way, I was more, I wouldn't say more productive, but I was very much more focused on
Mm,
time because I had so many constraints that I did exactly what you said. I found the time in the schedule and booked it.
yeah.
Now, when I'm like, oh, I have all these hours there that are free. And then I might not use them as effectively because I just feel like, oh, but also I have tomorrow. Like I still have to kind of book myself into my schedule, even though I have way more time
Right.
because it's just easy for it to escape, right? Like we just fill it with other things like this, like you said, the same number of hours in a day. And yet it really comes down to your mindset and actually figuring out what is achievable and doable
Yeah.
and how you fit it into your life and your schedule. Like I think things change over the years, but it doesn't get easier to sit down to write.
Right. I know I 100% agree. And the other side of that coin that I like to have people do with their time, I believe this is a Laura Vanderkam exercise, is to keep a time diary for a week. And
Yeah.
that week is a great amount of, like, you don't want to do it for one day because you might have this sort of strange day that
Yes.
doesn't follow its normal. But over the course of a week, we usually get the highs and the lows. And if it can be very revealing when people look at their time diary for the week and they realize, oh, I mean, either we find things that we aren't proud of, like, oh, I was on Instagram for 3 hours on Thursday,
Guilty.
right? Or the opposite might happen. I remember you talked about when your kids were young. I remember doing this exercise when my kids were young, thinking, why can't I just, fill in the blank? Why can't I just do this? Why can't? And I looked at my time diary and I was like, because there is no time to do that right now. This is the stage of life that we're in. And maybe there are, 15 to 30-minute increments that I could use a little more wisely, but I am not going to find 10 hours right now. And either I'm going to have to make different life choices, but I didn't want to make different life choices. I wanted to be more present with my kids. So, I just have to set a different expectation for myself now. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's why a lot of folks like I have a friend who's a YA author and her first book took 20 years.
Mm,
The reason for that was the choices she was making in her life. She was working full time. She had kids. She had all kinds of activities. And so she never abandoned that book. She kept working at it, but it was in slow increments. And there is nothing wrong with taking
correct.
time to finish your project. Now she's retired. She's working on, I think maybe her third YA now. And she's has so much more time, but she's also um that first book, I think you learned so much about how to write a book. The second book is just naturally a little easier. I
Yeah.
say easy, but a little easier because you kind of like, okay, I know how to get through this. And now she's writing much more quickly. But I think it's a good example of the fact that like during those certain times in your life, it's just don't put that pressure on yourself to have a book out in a year or two or 6 months or whatever it is. It's
Right.
it's that time might come later, but in the meantime, just keep working towards it in your own small way. And it's always amazing to me how much can get done in a short time. Like even if you have 15 minutes, it's crazy.
Right.
If you can do that fairly regularly, you can,
Yep.
move yourself forward. Yeah, it's
Yep.
crazy. Yeah, time. I think the time diary is an excellent idea. I do know that it will reveal scrolling right now. Too many me scrolling and pausing on unnecessarily horrible articles I do not need
Oh
to
yeah,
read
I
for
know we're
my mental
all
health,
guilty. We are all guilty of it.
right?
But it's interesting too. Sometimes the act of keeping the time diary will encourage you, shall I say, to make better
Yes,
choices because you
true.
don't want to have to write down.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I did that again. No, it's like taking keeping track of exercise, same thing, right? You kind of don't
correct.
want to leave the blank like, oh, I didn't actually get to it today. Like you feel like, oh, I want to be able to write down that I did the thing. Yeah, so it's just that accountability piece,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
figuring out. And like I love the idea that there's a generosity here about time. Um
Mhm.
Understanding your own life circumstances and your
Yeah.
own schedule and making decisions accordingly. Because there are things that we might be saying yes to that we don't need to say yes to. And that would free up some
Right.
time. I mean, it's priorities, right? And it's tough because I know I'm a person who likes to say yes to things
Me
and I
too.
have a hard time saying no. And then I look at my schedule and I think, okay, except that doesn't leave me much time for whatever, whatever. So it's just prioritizing. So if it's your time for your book or your novel, your memoir, whatever it is, maybe if you can make space for it, great. It might
Yeah.
not be the right time, but I love that. So good. That's such great advice. It's, I think, the most one of the most challenging things folks have is time or the perception of it.
It's a perception of it. And I think that people can feel more peace around it if we stop acting like we're a victim of our calendar.
Yes.
So there are some things that I have to do as a responsible parent
Yes.
that might not be my top preference to
Right.
do. I don't want to go to the organizational meeting, but if
Right.
my child is participating in the event, I am required to go to the organizational meeting. We all have these kinds of things. And and it's easy to feel like, oh, if I did not have to do that thing, then I would have more time,
Yes.
right? But if we can reframe it to be like, I get to be a supportive parent
Yes.
that allows my child to do an activity they want to do,
Yes.
it just lands a bit softer, and I will do the best I can with the time
Yeah.
that I have.
I love that framing too. I get to do this. And as somebody who's at the other end of it now with the kids, graduated from university and the whole thing, I look back at all those choices of bringing them to their activities and going to
Mm.
the meetings and at sports events and gymnastics and theater and all the things, right, that you support your kids with. And I don't regret a single moment of that.
Mm.
And now they're gone and doing their thing. And it's like, it's quite sad that I'm not like having to drive them anywhere.
You want to come and do some carpooling for me?
I totally would. I totally would. It would be so fun. But it's just like when you're in it, it's a long time. Like it
Yes.
feels like it's never going to end. And then when you're at the other side of it, it's shocking that it's done. Like it's kind of there's a little bit of grief attached to the fact that that's not my responsibility anymore.
Yeah.
I still want to go see my kids' things. I still go travel to see them do the things and whatever, but it's like a whole other stage of life. So I think writers need to just give themselves a break. And, you
Especially
know,
the women.
yes, especially the women. I totally agree with you. Another thing that you talked about was energy. And so talking about it being at the other end of things,
Yes.
I look back at those earlier years when my kids were small and I was doing all the things and like the list was long and I know you know about this like you just it feels like the calendar is full and there's activity and working and whatever there is and I have the energy for it and now I am finding myself really having to pay attention to my energy level and my
Mm.
body and what it's saying to me. And that's hard for me. I'm in Aries. I tend to just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then my body is like, no, 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 don't do that. So how do you address issues around energy with your writers?
Yeah, so there's a few things I think writers can be aware of. I do encourage people to try and figure out if there are times of the day or rhythms of the day at which you might have more energy for creative work. I do think there's a difference between needing to do, clerical work that you might be doing as a writer, whether that's if you like volunteer for organizations that you belong to, or you need to reply to emails or things like this that maybe don't require that creative generation that you would need while writing a book. Creative energy is just different. It just is. And so finding times and places maybe even can sometimes influence that. But again, it might not be ideal. Like if there's no way that I'm waking up at 5 a.m. to write. I'm just going to put that out there. I commend all of you who do that. My energy, like I would sooner stay up until 5 a.m. to
Yes.
write than to get up
Yes.
that early. So that would just be an example of doing what works well for me. But then there might be some life circumstances too that aren't going to allow what you think would be your ideal. And so we just find the next best thing. And I also want to acknowledge there, writers who are having to deal with health circumstances, whether it is for their own selves or for a person in their more immediate family. This can be incredibly taxing on energy. And when people are going through a very acute season of crisis, I
Mhm.
generally recommend that folks let themselves off the hook with their expectations. And maybe it's just like, if I can open the document today, that will be a win. And that's the only expectation I'm going to place for myself. And I'm also all for taking a break if if we need to do that. We can't do good work if we're not in a place to be able to do that. I will say though, sometimes people really need that creative outlet if they are going through a crisis. So I never want to like dictate a one size fits all kind of rule, but I think knowing yourself, knowing your situation can go a long way. But then like on a more practical perspective, we're all balancing these things, time, energy, and money. And you know, a lot of these like DIY kind of approaches to writing, they require a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so if shameless plug for book coaching here,
That's right.
but that can be a way to save some energy because I don't have to go chasing down all the rabbit holes, right? Because I have someone who can guide me in a very focused way through the process as opposed to me having to go learn about a dozen different writing aspects and then trying to figure out what I need to do and everything. No, you can have somebody hold you by the hand, so to speak, and guide you through that. And that can be another way to manage energy is, making things easier on yourself.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that so much. I was just thinking that it can also like when you're working with a book coach, like it can affect time too, because now you have a deadline. Now you have a
Mm,
focus goal. Um, you're more likely to set aside a dedicated amount of time during the week. But also I think a book coach can save you a ton of time from doing all of those.
yes.
Like you say, the like, and I've been there. I think we've all been there. You take this webinar and you take that little class and you take this free thing and you read that book. And not that they're all good. Everything is great. Like I haven't taken anything that I've regretted taking, but there's an enormous amount of time that goes into doing that. Trying to figure out what you need. Whereas when you're working one-on-one with somebody, it just lessens that time and it's more focused to the project that you're working on. So like there's this kind of interplay between time and energy here when it comes
Yeah.
to like, yeah, getting
Yeah. It's a
that
very good point.
support for. So, and but like you say, um, I think that again is giving people permission when you think about energy and health and aging and mental health issues and all of the stresses we have on ourselves like throughout the week and throughout the year and all of the things, um, it's really a good idea to understand yourself and your life and what is affecting you, because I don't know that we always like I don't know that we always pay attention to the fact that we have a lot of on our plate. We just do it, right? We just go to the
Yes.
next thing and do the next thing and do the next thing. And then we wonder why we're getting sick or why we're
Yes.
tired or why we're whatever the situation is. So I think that's just like a really lovely approach to just pay attention to yourself, know your body, know your where your state, what's happening, what the stressors are, and then maybe don't write, or maybe just write this much, or like decide for yourself what is going to be the thing that moves you forward and will make feel the best. I
Yeah, I
often,
really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just still going to say that, like, I often advocate for um, even busy people to find some time in their week for writing, because I think it can fill you up in a way
Yeah.
that will help you help others. I think that's true, but equally, like, don't put another thing on your plate if you you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, you have to make a choice. Don't stress yourself out to do the thing when other parts of your life are demanding attention. And I think we just have to kind of pause and acknowledge what's happening in our individual lives at any given time and decide.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it can be helpful if people also, we tend to have rhythms to our lives, like daily rhythms, weekly rhythms, but then also seasonal rhythms.
Yes.
And I think people don't really consider this. So, how I work in October is probably vastly different than how I work in December. And that's especially true for me. I'm very conscientious of the calendar. I am also a worship director. So, there's my music. And December, for what it is for most people, is already crazy, but for me, it's like extra layers
That add,
of
yeah.
crazy. And so I do my best to create space for that extra work that's going to be happening for that
Yeah.
job. And that means cutting out some things in December. Extra family obligations are happening and all the things. And so I know I'm not going to write very much in December. I'm not
Yes.
starting a new novel in
No.
December.
Right.
And that's okay because
Yeah.
I think it also takes a little bit of the stress off because I have proactively made that decision. It's
Yes.
not something that's happening to
Yes.
me. I know it's going to happen, so I'm going to make some space for it. And I put a time deadline on that. When we get back to January, I will resume with what I was doing. And it's a nice way of giving yourself permission if you need that permission, while also still making sure it's not something that's just gonna, like if we don't put a deadline on how long we're gonna rest, sometimes
Yes.
that rest turns into a permanent one.
Yeah, that's right. No, I love this so much because like, I'll just give a little example. A couple weeks ago, I felt like I haven't had this experience since I left teaching, but a couple weeks ago, I had this overwhelm and this kind of anxiety. And I thought, this is very familiar to me, but I don't know why it's happening. Like, I couldn't understand, like, what's happening in my life that I'm feeling this right now. And it's probably all the things, all the world things for whatever reason. And I just sent a note, like, I have a book coaching group, like, sessions, and I just sent a note, and I normally read their work on a Saturday morning, and that's what
Mhm.
I do. And I thought, like, I was kind of hitting a wall, and I just sent them a little message. I'm just taking a day off, and I'm going to be looking at work on Sunday. And that day off was so needed, and I loved it. And they were so appreciative of me telling them that. And it was almost like giving them permission to, sometimes you just need to take a day and
Yes.
take care of yourself. And I thought, okay, because, like, I don't want to disappoint them, but also, um, if we model that behavior, like that, yes, you can. There are times when you take the break, when you are focused on something else, when you're not writing all the time and you're doing other things. And that's perfectly okay, because all of our lives are, are like this, right? They're all over the place. And so I think it's good for folks to understand that they can take care of themselves in that way too.
Yeah.
And other people appreciate it because they think, oh yeah, I can do that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing you're doing for yourself. It's a good thing I can do that for myself. So there's
Yeah.
something about paying attention to our energy levels and our creative energy levels that is probably so important to pay attention to. And then the third thing I wanted to talk about was money, because no one wants to talk about money.
No one
And
wants
it's
to
part
talk
of
about
all of our
money.
lives.
Yes.
And we would like to all say it's unlimited, but the truth is most people aren't in those circumstances that have unlimited energy, time, or money. I wish I was that
Nobody
person, but
has
no.
an unlimited amount of any of those resources.
That's
We all
right.
have different amounts that we're given, but
That's
we
right.
do not have unlimited. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So money is an interesting topic when it comes to writing,
Mhm.
because it's it can be an expensive venture to write a book, which
Sure.
sounds strange because a lot of people think I'll write a book and it'll be like a bestseller and I will make millions. And the reality is, there's no guarantees you'll even be published, or even if you self-publish, that anyone will read it. So there's that whole part that we can't really control, but we can control the decision to write a book, and we can decide how we're going to allocate our resources for that. So where do you recommend folks kind of focus that aspect of when they're writing?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we'll try and dig into this one because like you said, money can just be such a
It's
hot
hard.
button topic.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that hopefully this will be a service to people by me saying this, I think there's this misconception in the world of writing that somehow it is a more pure venture the less money you spend.
I never thought of it that way, but I think you're completely right.
Yes. And that has to stop because nobody goes to their doctor and says, like, wow, you didn't spend a dime to get through medical school. That's amazing. Like, nobody
You
does
did it from
that.
YouTube videos. Way to go.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. And and so there's this idea that in order to prove to myself that I am a real writer, I must do everything on my own and not spend any money to do it. We also hear, and it's important to hear of the bad behaviors of scammers and things like this. So of
Yeah.
course there's going to be cautionary tales around money, and we should absolutely pay attention to those. I'm not saying to just throw money to the wind here, but if you are serious about becoming a professional writer, and as soon as you have sold a book, you are now a professional writer. If you are serious about doing that, it's going to require some money to do that.
Yeah.
And that's just the honest truth. Of course, there might be different amounts that people spend in order to do that, but I do not know of a published author who did not spend money in one way or another to publish their book.
Yeah. Agreed. 100%. And for me, um, right from the beginning when I was starting to write my dad's book, and I was an English teacher and I was creative writing teacher, and it's not, and I studied English at university. It's not that I was unaware of, and I wrote a lot, but writing a book is its own thing. Like it's a
Mhm.
totally new thing. So the first thing I needed to do for myself was to become more educated about it, about creative writing. And that's where I started taking classes, and um, money well worth, well spent. But I feel like everyone needs to make those kinds of decisions about how they're going to educate themselves. Um, but there is going to have to be some money spent. And yes, there's lots of
Yes.
courses out there. There's lots of webinars. There are a lot of free resources that can help.
Yep.
And lots of great books have been written on craft. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to write and not just read those books. Have them beside you, but also do the work. Um, but I mean, we're coming back to that. Like, I think up front, that education piece and that learning how to write great books, and understand craft and understand that whole process. To me, that's kind of the foundational. Like, I mean, you can talk about advertising money, or you can talk about
Sure.
um, you know, spending money on launches and spending money on all kinds of things. But if you don't have a good product, which is your book,
Yeah.
then, I feel like there's a disconnect there. And a lot of folks will, write that book, put it out there, and spend a lot of money to get it published or publish it themselves or whatever. And then people don't read it because it's not good. So,
Right.
like, I think we all want to be better writers and learn the craft and feel confident. So to me, like, if you're going to spend money, especially as a new author, it's on a great course, it's on a book coach, it's on something that will help you move forward as a writer and learn craft.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's various levels at which it makes sense to invest more. So if you are just thinking, I have this idea for a book, I've never written a book before, then it is appropriate for you to learn from their many great as you've mentioned, many great free resources, whether it's through podcasts or YouTube videos, or even like checking out a book from your library that talks about writing. There's so many ways that you can do a lot of great learning without spending a dime. And I do think that almost all writers go through that.
Mhm.
We go through that process where we're trying to take in as much information as we can to do the thing that we want to do. This is all well and good and a normal part of the natural process of becoming an author. However, there does get to be a point where we have to get feedback on our work. And that is the part that really makes a person grow as a writer. Information is cheap. We all have access to it. If it was just a matter of having the right information, everybody would be writing a
Okay.
bestseller.
I know I sometimes think I have all kinds of craft books behind me. I soak them up. Anytime there's a new one, I'm like, I'm gonna read that. And if you'd think that if you've read all the craft books, you've just downloaded all the knowledge and it'll just come through on your
Correct.
fingers. That is not how this works. We all wish it was true. It just doesn't.
Yes, we all wish it was true, but it doesn't work that way. And
That's
so
not
at
work.
some point, in order to progress to the next phase of
Yeah.
being a writer, you've got to get feedback on your work. And it's true that you might be able to do that in a writing group where maybe there's some reciprocity. Um, I think we all kind of have feelings about this though, because if you've been in any of those groups for any amount of time, you're going to know that there's bad ones and there's good ones.
Right.
So, you get what you pay for sometimes, right? And if you're not paying for anything, well, there we go.
Right.
So you're going to be working with whether it's a book coach or a developmental editor or somebody who is informed, who can give you solid feedback on your work for the intent of making it better and teaching you something along the way. I think that's where we do our greatest growth is when we have someone that looks at the thing that I've actually written. They're not just speaking at a high level about, this POV does this kind of thing. They're like, no, the POV in your novel is not
Yeah.
working
Right
because.
here.
Yes,
See
and
this
they
head
can
hopping happening right here in
exactly,
this
and they
line.
can point that out to you.
Yes.
So that is how we learn. That's how knowledge becomes applied at that point, and that's the biggest growth. And people, I think, are not aware that they're going to have to go through that middle phase, so to speak, in order to get to the end game of whether it's trying to get agented or traditionally published or self-published. Doesn't matter if you don't go through that middle phase, you're not going to have a good book.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I was thinking about too, like whenever we have a big project, like I don't know, you have to replace your deck,
Yes.
or there's car issue, or you want to go on a trip in 2 years, whatever it is, we like most people tend to have a ballpark of how much that's going to cost. Maybe start setting money aside, right? They'll start to like plan for that big project because nobody wants to just like pay out of pocket
Yes.
for the thing, right? Um, so if we think of our book projects as a long-term big project and that we are, setting aside money for this or for like a developmental editor or for copy and proofreading at the end, like if we kind of understand the parts of the process we want to really, really invest in, and then it's not like a sticker shock, right? We're prepared for that
Right.
and we're investing in our project, investing in ourselves. And then I think it's totally doable, but it's just I think, when people are shocked that, oh, I have to, um, pay this like amount to get a developmental editor, for instance. Well, if you have a developmental editor, it's gonna like your book is just gonna be so much better. Like it
Yeah.
just will. So I mean, again, we're going back to goals and what you wanted of your book and how you're going to publish and who your readers are and all the things. But there's just places where I think you have to invest in your project if you want it to go well. And also just like you're educating yourself, and every project you do afterwards is going to be that much better because you've learned firsthand from that person. And it's like
Yeah.
a rich experience. So,
Yeah, totally. It all comes back to making sure that your objectives are aligned with your behaviors,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So if
yes,
if you want to write novels for fun, you want to write about your life story for fun, you do not need to invest. You could invest because for the joy of learning how to do it well, but you cannot become a professional in something without behaving like a professional. And the short story here is that professionals spend money on their writing.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. So time, energy, and money. What I love about what you're saying about all of these things is know thyself, right? Like really understand
Yes.
yourself and how um
And
and what your
also
life
know
looks
like
like.
what you're willing to spend more of and
Yes.
maybe less of. So if money is tight for me, then automatically I know I will need to invest more time and energy to
Yeah.
compensate for that. If I have more money to spend, but maybe I have lower energy, now I'm going to look for resources that are going to help me in that way. It's a balance of
Yeah.
all three, but you have limits on all of
Yeah.
them.
And there's I love this so much because it is going to be so individualistic for every single writer and their
Yes.
circumstances and time of life and all the things. And there's no like, wouldn't you love to be able to just give somebody the magic pill? Here is here is how you do it, and everyone will be fine. It like we really have to, like anything else about our own health or fitness or whatever, we have to figure out that for ourselves. Like we can get advice from other people, but really we have to figure it out for ourselves. And that's why I think working one-on-one with a book coach can be so life-changing because there's that relationship is created and the book coach really gets to understand how that writer functions and
Yep.
how they think and how they approach things and what they need. And that takes maybe a little bit of time, but like what a rewarding thing for both parties to be able to like focus on that project together and move it forward. And it's like to me, it's always like the most joyous thing to see a writer just like these light bulb moments. And I just think it's so cool, you know?
Yes.
And
100%.
yeah, so yeah, I feel like I mean, big plug for book coaches out there.
Not
And
that
there's
we're
lots of
biased.
different kind of book coaches and different genres and different ways of approaching things. So people should obviously do their research
Yes.
and talk to coaches and see what works for them. But I think you've given us so many amazing ways of looking at ourselves as writers, and I just feel like there's this uh acceptance of who we are and our time and our energy and like giving ourselves grace and being able to go, okay, I can figure this out, but I have to like be realistic
Yes.
about like mathematical analytical about
Yes.
our lives.
That's right.
Be honest with ourselves, which sometimes we don't like to be.
Yep. I always say the numbers don't lie. Numbers don't tell the full story of what's going on, but they also don't lie. And so when you force yourself to look at some of these things that can be actually quantified with a number, it's not going to lie to you.
Amazing. Yeah, I love it. Full circle back to you're the
Yep.
mathematician, bringing in your creativity, your music, and your teaching and all your skills as a book coach. And this is really great. Thank you so much. I feel like I need to go now write a diary of things, figure out how much time I really am wasting scrolling and reading bad news. I need to get off
Yeah.
get off the
Yeah.
Instagram.
Brace yourself.
Right, right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Where can people find you?
I am at solutionsforwriters.com. And I am also, if you are scrolling, Instagram.
Yes.
I am on Instagram and Threads at Write with Sarah, and that is Sarah without an H. So
Perfect. Well, I will scroll and see your posts, and that'll be scrolling for good and not evil. So I feel like
there we
that's
go.
good, right?
There we
Scroll for
go.
good.
That's right.
Sarah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This was just such a delight to talk with you.
Thanks.
So thank you.
I believe writers need Sisu, strength, courage, and determination to get their projects done, and I can help you access your Sisu. Are you working on a novel or memoir? You don't have to do it alone. Join us in the Women Writing Circle. We meet weekly for 90 minutes to get pages done. Or consider applying for an upcoming group book coaching program to develop the foundational elements of your story in a supportive community. These 8-week-long programs include weekly coaching calls, goal setting, craft discussion, and personalized feedback on writing tasks. If you'd prefer to work one-on-one, contact me about one of my coaching packages at lisakovalabookcoach.com. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing. Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.